Alright, in part 3 of the parts fitment video for the Ryca CS-1 Cafe Racer, we're going to be mounting the seat assembly. Make sure you watch these videos in order. So you're going to set your seat up on your seat pan and make sure that it's lined up. Check your fitment of your side panels and your seat, forward to back, left to right. Just make sure that the seat is in the position that you had from earlier. If you watch the earlier videos, you'll be able to look underneath and make sure those two marks are lined up with the metal seat pan. You can stick your upholstery pan back on and just make sure there's a nice gap, a little bit of a gap between the gas tank and the seat. You don't want that rubbing off your nice new paint. Underneath here, I'm going to make sure that those marks line up. Once I know that the seat is in the exact position that I want it, front to back, and the side covers line up, I'm going to mark the 4 holes on the seat. You can either do this with a Sharpie, or you can actually put the smaller drill bit, start drilling the pilot holes or mark them. So if you can't get the Sharpie through the holes to make a mark, you can set it in place here and just drill with the 5/32 drill bit, the smaller drill bit that we've been using the whole time. So here what I'm doing, I'm not drilling actually all the way through the pan, I'm just making a mark with my drill through the original 4 holes, and this way we can sandwich the seat against the upholstery pan through the metal seat pan. So what this is doing is basically sandwiching the entire assembly together as one unit. So now I got 4 marks, and I'm going to drill those out with my smaller drill bit, the 5/32 bit. So after I drill out all 4 holes, we're going to sandwich the assembly together, check it out, and we're going to be bolting it back together. So now that I've got all 4 holes drilled, we're going to next take the seat pan off the motorcycle. So go ahead and take off now the lock nuts and the rear bolts. Here's a shot of the 4 holes I drilled on the seat pan. There's the front 2 and the rear 2. And this is going to be a sandwiched assembly. That through the seat into the rubber rivet nuts on the upholstery pan that we did earlier. There it is. So now once you remove the entire assembly from the motorcycle, you have 3 on the back here and 4 on the bottom of the upholstery pan. Go ahead and stick that on top of your seat. You can tighten down the 3 bolts on the back, the 3 longer or shorter 1/2-inch bolts on the back with the flat washers of the upholstery pan. And on the bottom, we're going to be sandwiching all 3 layers together. So here's a shot of the seat upside down. Make sure you use Loctite on all these. These bottom 4 bolts are going to have captive lock washers. These are the 5/8 bolts. They're 5/8 inch long. And you're going to sit those in place through the metal seat pan, through the seat itself, and into your rubber rivet nuts in the upholstery pan. So if you did this correctly, you tighten the back up, everything will line up just right, and go ahead and tighten these 4 screws down and sandwich those rubber rivet nuts inside the upholstery pan. And this makes for an extremely strong assembly. We have been riding on this for a long time, and these things are just incredibly strong. We've tested out all sorts of different rivets, and these were by far the best. So here we tighten down the 4 bolts that hold the metal seat assembly against the fiberglass seat. It sandwiches it against the upholstery pan. So all 3 together should be lined up exactly right. Now see, that's nice and sturdy. Strong. Your whole assembly is back in place. So we're going to go ahead and set that back on the... Actually, the next step, while we're down here, is going to be to... we already mounted the taillight, so... Yeah, so we're going to mount the taillight next. Since it's off the bike now, let's go ahead and mount the taillight to the marks that we made earlier. Now, as I remember, I told you earlier, the clothespins work really well for this. The clamping clothespins hold just enough gap between the metal and the upholstery pan, and the seat pan itself. You're going to be using an SEM adhesive. The door skin or the adhesive we are going to be including with the kits has been tested. Let me tell you, we tried dozens and dozens of different adhesive. In fact, here I'm using a different one. The SEM adhesive we include with the kit, it remains a little bit flexible after it hardens, and it's almost temperature proof, and it is extraordinarily strong. It'll actually rip the fiberglass apart before it comes undone. So go ahead and put a nice thick layer on the outside of the metal license plate bracket. Put a layer of the SEM adhesive. Make sure you mix it real well on a piece of cardboard first. You can use a popsicle stick like I'm doing. But put a nice thick layer on there, and you're going to be sandwiching this. Don't use a real tight clamp when you put this on here, because you don't want it to sandwich all the way against. You really want some airspace in between. You want a gap of that glue. You want that glue to have a little bit of thickness between the metal and the fiberglass itself. So that's why we use clothespins, because it doesn't tighten it extremely. It doesn't tighten it flat against the seat itself. So here's we got the clothespins. Clamp those on once your taillight assembly is in position. This stuff sets up pretty quick in about 5 to 10 minutes. So make sure you're prepared when you mix it, that you're prepared to follow through with the whole thing. So we're going to be using this glue here on the taillight piece, and we're going to be using it in one other place, which is the side covers. So once the tail light's in place and it's lined up exactly where you want it, while that's drying, I'm going to go ahead and show you a little bit of overlap into the next video. The next section of this is going to be basically showing a couple pieces of the electrical. We're going to go over make sure your tail light right there is nice and centered. See how it's centered and perfect? So the next section we're going to show you in this video is how to mount the rectifier, the starter solenoid, and the coil. So here's the coil, and that's the original hole in the coil, and this is a bolt that we include. This is a longer stainless bolt with a flat washer and a nut on the bottom. That's going to be used to mount the coil in a new position. So basically up here on the top riser, use the stock screw to hold the coil in place. With a screwdriver, tighten the top section of the coil up against that riser, and on the bottom, you're going to be tightening it through the other hole on the frame. There's a threaded nut on the frame. You're going to stick basically that small bolt and nut through the entire bottom of the coil. I'm going to show you a close-up in a minute to show you what I mean. Next, there's a rectifier and the starter solenoid. Now, these are also going to be shown in the electrical video. I'm just giving you a heads up now so you know why there's more holes on your battery box. And actually here I'm doing it upside down, but you're supposed to mount the rectifier to the front of the battery box with the stock bolts and those two lock nuts that we include. So here's the rectifier, and I'm putting it upside down by accident, but the stock screws hold it in place with the lock nuts on the back. So you got to tighten the front up with the stock. Your stock bolts may either be 10 mil bolts or they might be actually Phillips heads. So here's the starter solenoid that's going to mount to the bottom of the battery box, with 2 Allen head cap screws that we include and 2 of those lock nuts that we include. Not sure why I'm holding 4 there, but so 2 of the Allen head cap screws go in the bottom of the starter solenoid, up through the bottom of the battery box, and then the lock nuts go on the inside. And the reason I'm showing you this is so that you can, if you want to get a jump start on the electrical, this is where those pieces will actually mount. And so you know when you get your battery box that those are with the extra holes. The additional holes are actually for these pieces. Once again, I'm going to be going over an electrical video, which you can watch separately, how to route the wiring, extend the key switch, and also how to do the lights inside the new tank plate. So here's the coil mounted in position. So you see the top of that, the riser, the screw goes through in the original position on the top, but at the bottom we include a longer screw with a nut on the back side that goes through this the tab that's on the frame itself. See, this allows for that lower tank mount. And here we got the rectifier with the stock screws in the front and the lock washers inside, and the starter solenoid beneath it. All right. So there's the inside showing the rubber that we mounted earlier and the lock nuts that are on the inside of the battery box. The rubber basically keeps the battery up out of the way so all that hardware can be inside of there. Alright, so now that we've mounted the taillight, we're going to go ahead and mount the side covers. Now make sure you pull out the side cover mounts from the battery box with your thumb screws. Make sure that you can feel them from the back side and that they're in position well, so you can get a nice, so they feel flat up against each other. You don't want the side cover mounts to be pushed way real far in, because you won't be able to glue the side covers in position. So once the seat has been retightened down at this point, you've retightened down the lock nuts on the front, and you've tightened down the back with the seat bolts. Now we're going to go ahead and glue the side panel on. Check your gaps again. Make sure everything is still exactly where you want it. And then we're going to go ahead and mix up more of the SEM glue. So mix up more of the SEM glue. I'm using a different glue here, but the one that we're going to include in the kit is the SEM adhesive. It's incredible epoxy, and it holds just absolutely stronger than anything we've tried. So mix your epoxy up real well on a piece of cardboard and spread it out. Make sure you get a nice thick layer on this side cover mount. And once again, you don't want to use heavy-duty clamps. This stuff has a working time of like 5 minutes. So typically I won't do both sides at once. I'll mix up one and do one side, and then hold it in position just with my hands, and it seems to work best. So get yourself a nice thick layer, probably an 1/8 inch thick on this. Make sure that you have, you want to have some thickness to it, because you don't want to clamp it in position. You're basically going to hold it in position. Push down firmly, but don't clamp it so that there's no glue in between, sandwiched in between the two layers. This stuff bonds metal to fiberglass stronger than anything we've tried. So now you put your fiberglass piece in position, and if you want to, you can mark these from earlier on the backside with a Sharpie, so that once they're in position, you can pull them off and check and make sure that they're exactly where you wanted them, and just let them dry on the table. So here I'm holding in position till the glue sets up. Time lapse, this is actually probably more like 10 minutes, 5 to 10 minutes. And I recommend just holding it. And if you can take the time to just hold it yourself there, you guarantee a better fit, because you'll be able to watch if anything moves. And just check your gaps while it's drying and make sure everything's in place. The gap on the bottom against the belt guard is good and in place, is nice, and everything is perfect. You can now you can take off. Oh, well, here's me sanding the other one. I should have mentioned this earlier. If you sand the backside of your fiberglass panels, we recommend sanding them. Just wipe it off with a clean towel, but don't use any solvents or cleaners when you attach that. So that's just a reminder, when you do mount these, you may want to scuff those up with 80 or 100 grit first before you glue them to these side panel mounts. So now I'm holding this position. I'm showing a little bit of the time involved. You want to make sure you do this for like 5 minutes or so. Oh, and I'm doing the other side. So once I sand down the one fiberglass panel on the inside, now I'm doing the other side here. Make sure you put this on real thick like before. And once you get this real thick in position, and I should have showed you on the other side, we took the panel off and let it dry on the table. So once you position this in place, and it's if you mark it from earlier, it makes it real easy. But if you check the gaps and you hold it in position and everything's good, you can take off the thumb screws from the inside of the battery box, and you can just let this dry on the table. It doesn't have to be pressed down or anything like that. So what I usually do is let it set up for about 5 minutes in my hand, then I take off the thumb screws and just let this cure on the table. And you might want to let this stuff sit overnight. I mean, it takes a while to fully harden. Once my gaps are good and everything's good, I'll take this battery box. I'll take the side panel actually off the battery box and set it on the table to let it dry. So that's pretty much it on fitting the body panels. Once they've been sitting overnight and it's hardened and it's dried against the back of the fiberglass, just put it back on and double check everything and make sure your seat assembly and your side panels and your tank and your belt guard line up exactly the way you hoped. In the other videos, we'll be discussing how to do the electrical, the new tank mount with the electrical in there, the turn signals and the neutral light, and there'll be another video on the rear set brackets and the muffler mounts, and just a basic general build video that shows just the remainder of the items. But this is the hard part. This is the trickiest part of all, just fitting all the body panels. And it's not tricky. It's just, you just want to take your time with it. There's a shot of the license plate in position and the tail light in position. And here's the other side, mounting that back on like we did earlier, and just mount the thumb screws back in, and everything should be in place. With that said, stay tuned for the rest of the videos. We should have those up shortly, and enjoy your new cafe.